Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Hope you had some time off, had a good time over the holidays. So we're going to call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Discussion, all those in favor, post carried. Then we have the extension of the contract for the on-call collection of hazardous materials.
Move the recommendation.
Yeah, so that's been moved and seconded, but do you have anything to add to your report?
Mr. Chair, nothing further to add.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Wolf.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. Just a few questions on this one. First, it mentions that there were 7 proposals and we're splitting the contract to 2 of them. The other 5 proposals, sometimes in these we get a appendix or something that lists them, or a table. Were they not listed because they were quite lower down on the scoring, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that was the initial competitive bid that was done back in 2021. They were partial bids, so they did not cover the whole cost for the contract.
Okay, great, that answers that one, thanks. My next question was in regards to trends. So if we're approving this, do we need to have different contractors because it's an altered supply of hazardous material we're picking up? So for example, when someone dumps something illegally on the side of the road for the city to clean up, I assume the city staff go there first, assume they could clean it up, but if they identify it's hazardous, they flag it with cones, contact the company, and they come and remove it. Have we noticed a trend or a change in what the material is?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the most common item has been consistent, and that's asbestos-containing drywall. Instances of illegal dump have gone up trend-wise, so over 2022, it's up 38%.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question, just because some of us will attend the Metro Vancouver Council level soon. With jurisdictional issues on this, I know like the air quality in the region is monitored and all that by Metro Vancouver level. Where does Metro Vancouver come in where the city kind of ends our role of paying contractors, managing the site where the stuff goes? Because we have had like stop work orders and fires on some of the sites that store hazardous waste material, like on Mitchell Island and such. So do you have any comment on where the city can advocate for more at the regional level?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. So Metro Vancouver does handle the overarching campaign for Put Waste in Its Place. And we do communicate on a regional level at the Solid Waste Subcommittee on strategies and tactics that all municipalities in the region can do to coordinate across municipalities as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and anything else? Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment. And just give us a minute. We'll go to the Finance Committee. By the way, I should mention that Councillor Au is somewhere else. He is actually in the meeting through Zoom. Okay, let's call the Finance Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Then we have a delegation from KPMG. If you want to come forward and introduce yourselves. And we got lots of paperwork on this one.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is CJ James, a partner at KPMG, and with me here is Anu Adele, a Senior Manager on the audit. We don't have anything further to add to our report, and happy to take any questions.
All right. Any comments or questions? Councillor Heed.
Yes, this is in reference to something we discussed previously. I'm not sure if it was in presence of the auditors from KPMG, but it relates to FIN 78 and how we're still looking at the gaming revenue allocation. And we did have a discussion regarding the RCMP part of that. This is antiquated, in my opinion.
I think page 78 is in the next report.
So it's not in,
It's not in the audit report.
okay, but I thought we're on financial information third quarter.
No, we are
Okay,
on the
okay,
delegation.
My mistake.
There you go. So just hold that thought. Councillor McNulty.
Thanks very much for the report and the audit. Did you in the audit find any abnormally a difference in terms of practices or anything that we should be aware of? And did you find anything that we're doing real well?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we have not started our audit yet for this year. This report is a planning report, so we will be starting our audit coming up in, Anu, February time period. And at that time, when we come back to report, I will be able to answer your questions at that time.
Are you going to look at the previous audit to see if there were any, not that we have any discrepancy, we had a clean audit last time, which we're very proud of, but any areas for improvement built on the previous audit? You've been auditing us for quite some time, so obviously you've got some background.
Well, that comes in the letter at
That'll
the
come
end
in
of
the
the
letter?
audit, doesn't it?
Correct.
But hopefully you'll look at what
It's a
you
very
did in
short
past,
letter.
and away we
don't have
go.
a lot of improvement to do.
That's what I'm trying to get at and keep at. Thank you.
No, you can always be better. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We will be speaking with you in due course, and of course, you'll be speaking lots to our staff as you go through the audit, and we'll speak to you in due course.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, that brings us to the financial information for the third quarter. Cindy Gilfillan and is Mike Ching here? Mike are the designated speakers on this. So, give us any remarks to highlight anything in the report, and then we'll go to discussion.
There's nothing to add to the report, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Heed, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, I think you already know my question. It's respect to how we're actually allocating the gaming revenue and understanding that we know we get this amount of money. We know we've got policing. Originally, that was based on the numbers of police officers there, but we discussed this probably about a year ago, and we were going to look at trying to change how we itemize that particular revenue stream or how our expenses were regarded to our gaming revenue stream. Did we look at that at all? So we can get some true accounting with respect to that.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Heed, the gaming allocation is actually done through the budget process. So during the 2024 process, the 4-officer allocation has remained as the funding mechanism. It is simply an allocation, not necessarily tied to the activities that are done by the RCMP. It's just a way to fund those officers when they were originally introduced several years ago. If that is something that is looking to be changed, it can be done through the 2025 budget process.
And I think simply because there's some misunderstanding, I think Councillor McNulty pointed this out. He thought there were 4 officers actually assigned to the casino. We know that's unrealistic. We understand that we do that, get that gaming revenue. We understand that we of course expend that gaming revenue, but I think there has to be more of a truer picture, in my humble opinion, as to that allocation of what is it, just under $1 million per year.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Heed, it is something that can be looked at through the upcoming budget process. We just approved 2024, so it would be the next one in 2025. However, if there are changes to the gaming allocation, the difference would actually be an impact to tax draw. So if we're reducing the gaming allocation that is meant to represent the activity that the officers do, the tax draw would make up that difference.
Well, I think we've got to identify what we're going to use that $900,000 for. We're not, reducing that allocation. We're just going to utilize it and account for it properly. So maybe it's something that we can start to look at. The other question I have relates to policing favorable variance is driven by lower than budgeted policing contract costs due to RCMP complement of officers. So, I understand we're in a public meeting, we don't want to give the numbers out, but I am assuming that we're going through another quarter of a reduction in actual strength with the RCMP. I don't know if Ms. Akiem can answer that, or who?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Heat, the RCMP vacancy for Richmond detachment is fairly low compared to other ones. I think the last time we reported out is in the 6 to 8% range year-round. So it's not something of particular concern. Part of the reason is when we allocate for asking for new officers, it takes Depot 12 to 18 months before they send us new staff, so there's a gap time. So hence, some of that funding looks like it's not spent, but it's allocated.
Again, I think the point I want to make here is more accuracy on when we start to look at stuff like that versus the way we've done business all over the years. I think if we can have a little bit more accuracy, because if we have this trend of the vacancies and we're looking at a favorable variance continually, I think we've got to look at something else there with respect to that. Thank you.
Just before we go to the next speaker, Cecilia, correct me if I'm wrong, when we get because there's vacancies, we get a surplus in the community safety budget, right? That's what you were just talking about. That surplus goes into the community something fund, right? Jerry?
So Your Worship, that amount goes into the general surplus through the any community safety surplus?
Right. And we use some of that general surplus to bring down our taxes this year, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So I just want to make the point that because of the vacancies, we've overtaxed. It goes into surplus, but we've used that tax to bring down the next year's taxes and return it to the residents who are paying the taxes. It's not just going into some big slush or something. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. One, thank you very much for the report. I always appreciate getting the update on the financial situation and keep that coming. Following along Councillor Heed's comments, I think it's critical that we make sure and clarify with the public exactly what RCMP presence is at the casino. There are people who go there that are assuming that they're safe, the RCMP are around, and everything is going. And obviously, if we haven't got that correct, we need to put it in. The other question is, we have to, would ask, is does the gaming committee or commission feel that they need the coverage up there? And if so, they should be paying for it out of there, not out of our share thereof. We ask other groups to cover community safety. So, Your Worship, through you and to staff, I think if we can get that clarified, just exactly what's there, and that, because there is an assumption up there. We want people to feel safe when they go to recreate or whatever they're doing in that particular thing. So it's important. Thank you.
Cecilia, do you want to comment on the security presence at the River Rock?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor McNulty, the RCMP does not have 4 people physically allocated there, but what they do is on the general duty members, they do their regular patrols through it. So out of the RCMP budget, 4 officers, the cost of 4 officers is allocated from the gaming funding, but they could be at any point in time have more or less officers allocated to the casino area, both through the general duty patrols and if there's any events, as in if there's an investigation, there might be many, many more officers dedicated to a case, specific case, and in normal days, every day, there's somebody who would be patrolling. Additionally, the River Rock have their own security people patrolling on their floor and such. They are paying for their own security. The RCMP does not provide regular security for the casino.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 2 quick questions. When I was looking through the kind of list of trends, and it kind of only shows like 2.5 years, and then the pandemic obviously had a big impact just prior to that. So the one question I had was under the Richmond Hotel room revenue. It looks like it's
What page is this
page
on?
75. That's the bottom bar graph there. I'm just curious if the hotel room revenues are now surpassing what they were before the pandemic, because I think accommodation services Canada wide were hitting record highs prior to the pandemic. So are we back at that level or above? Because it just seems like year to year, this is a pretty big jump.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, we are surpassing pre-pandemic levels.
So this is all-time high rates.
Very strong position.
Okay, thanks. My second question to staff is in regards just to the list of operating activity on page 79 and 80, all the different departments and divisions, kind of year-to-year variances. And I was just looking for the trends in them, and I think I counted 7 times it was mentioned that there were favorable variances due to vacancies or vacant positions. I assume that's far more than 7 positions that were vacant, but anything that staff can say about that trend? Is this like an all-time number of vacancies that have resulted in positive or favorable variances, I should say?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the vacancies are actually somewhat consistent quarter over quarter. It does have quite a bit of turnover as people either leave positions or get promoted and positions need to be backfilled. So Q2 to Q3, we've marginally increased, but a lot of what was outstanding at Q2 as a vacancy has been filled and new vacancies have come up. So the majority of the budget relates to salaries. So as an organization, approximately 60% of our budget is salaries. So as positions are changed and people move along, it's not unexpected that the vacancies are our biggest driver of the surplus.
Appreciate that, thanks.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think everybody's having trouble finding staff these days, so I'm not surprised. So my question is regarding page 68, the business license. It states that the new business licenses are strong, that many people are applying to open new businesses. But do we have any numbers on how many businesses have closed? Because I've heard from quite a few people that own, especially small businesses, that with the CERB coming due, the financing from the province during COVID, that quite a few businesses are at risk of closing. And I've had 2 businesses ask me if the city would be willing to ask the federal government to extend that CERB deadline, because apparently it's very concerning. So do we have any idea of how many businesses have closed, especially after COVID?
Through your worship, Councillor Day, we do not have specific data on how many businesses have closed. However, we see it as being fairly consistent from year to year in terms of the number of valid business licenses. We have had an increase in new businesses, however.
Yeah.
So the number of businesses that are closing appears to be consistent, but what the numbers are higher in terms of total valid in the sense that the new businesses have come online. So we aren't really detecting a major upsurge in businesses closing more than historical patterns.
Okay. So you haven't seen that many, because I've heard from quite a few in the last little while, and I'm wondering, Mayor Brody, if it's something we want to consider doing is writing to the feds and saying if there's a way to extend the CERB just to the end of the year, so some of these businesses that are, suffering have a chance to maybe recuperate.
We would have to know far more about it, but what does occur to me that we could do for the next report or subsequent reports is tell us about not just new business licenses, but net new business licenses, which would give a lot of the information that Councillor Day has mentioned.
Okay, so wait till the next report then. And my next question is regarding industrial and office vacancy rates. It states in the report that the vacancy rates are going up, so we have more industrial and offices empty than we've had for a while. Numbers are still pretty low, but we've seen in Alberta, they have a model where they're actually converting office space into apartments. I don't imagine we're anywhere near that point, but I just wanted to comment from staff whether that's something we would need to look at potentially in the future.
Through your worship to Councillor Day. So in terms of industrial vacancy rates, we're still well below what's a healthy market. Even the 1.2%, which is an increase over what we've seen, is still fairly low. So it's still a very constrained market. Similarly with office space, while it's edged up a bit to 9.9%, it's still below what we've seen across the country in terms of double-digit vacancies in other markets. And there's still a fairly healthy market here. So I don't necessarily think we would be at that kind of tipping point. That could be explored further in the future if
That's good.
were to be direction.
Good, so we're not racing up, we're just creeping up. And my last question is on page 81. It states that there's 1.69 billion in cash and investments. How much of that is committed to projects?
Can you say off the top, or do you need to give us a memo with that information?
Do you have it?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, approximately of that amount, I would say 468 million is tied to projects.
Excellent, so out of the 1.6 billion, 468 million is pretty much already committed to a project.
They're not committed to a project. However, some of the funds are restricted. They are in reserves, which are restricted, and some are in liabilities that we owe. It could be developers, it could be someone that we need to refund those money for.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. First, thanks for the report. I always find these ones very interesting in terms of the update. But just make a quick comment on the policing issue that we talked about. You know, as I recall, and I think we'll find that the rationale for the policing increase for Richmond back in the day to do with the casino was to do with anticipated call load increase and calls for service. So it was never tagged to the casino itself from what I remember reading. Similar to the calls for service for transit police, they do have a contractual obligation regarding the Canada Line and I think still do have an office at the location, not the casino, mind you. So I think we'll find that it's to do with calls for service and general duties. But just regarding the report, I want to comment first of all on the overview and the insights into the global economic situation, the world situation, Canada, BC, and Richmond. I just recommend for anybody who is listening in the public, it's an open report, give it a read because it's a very well encapsulated report that covers a lot of the things that we hear about all the time, inflation and everything else. The one specific thing, and I'll just mention it, it's not a question, but I just myself wonder if it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine, and that's the construction values and the housing starts. Those had significant dips. And I understand throughout the report we'll talk about quarterly fluctuations and that kind of thing, and I hope it is just a quarterly fluctuation because the housing crisis we're in, I don't think we want to see that develop into a trend. And anybody who's listening, have a look at those. They're very well laid out, simple to read and understand. So thank you very much for the information.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to receive? Moved and seconded. Discussion, further discussion. All those in favor, post carried. Thank you both. Then we go to the active capital projects financial update for the third quarter.
To the chair, staff has nothing further to add.
Okay. So we have some questions then. We'll start with Councillor Heed.
I don't know if you can answer this or possibly Mr. Corrado can answer this. This relates to the bylaw license plate recognition, the LPR system that you're indicating here as a capital project.
Sorry, which one?
103, the bylaw license plate recognition. FIN 103. And the question I have for you, Mr. Corrado, is first of all, how many of our bylaw vehicles will be outfitted with the license plate recognition?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, currently there's one vehicle that's been outfitted, and it's been in implementation for the better part of the year, and it's one of the major drivers for our increase in enforcement this year, particularly proactive enforcement of time-based parking violations.
So we paid $200,000 just to outfit one vehicle with this system?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, this is a project that occurred over time, and this is for the multi-year allocation of this, including the software.
For one vehicle?
Vehicle, software, and equipment that go in with it.
That's a very costly LPR system. And I'm quite familiar with the LPR systems that are out there, and I've never seen one at this expense for one vehicle. So going on to my second question with respect to how we utilize the LPR, is it just for bylaw parking infractions?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, it's primarily through bylaw parking infractions, and its averaged ability to bring in thousands of revenue, thousands of tickets on a monthly basis.
And identifying someone that's previously been issued a ticket?
It's identifying someone who has superseded their allotted time for parking or has not paid for parking.
Do we utilize this for something else? Because other LPRs, for example, through ICBC, some of the funding available there in locating vehicles, parked stolen vehicles. Do we have access to that?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, that would mean maintaining a database of stolen vehicle plates. I understand that the RCMP currently have that technology. The bylaw department doesn't maintain a database of stolen vehicles.
So is there any way, I'm just, for $208,000, I'm going to harp on this for a minute because I think that's a very costly venture and I really question why. Secondly, the utilization of license plate recognition technology is so much greater than just parking violations. And their ICBC does have a program available in order for us to locate parked stolen vehicles. And I really encourage us to look at the viability of utilizing that, and hopefully on more than just one vehicle.
Maybe what I could suggest is that we ask staff, this report is to be received for information, so it doesn't go to council, but if we could ask staff to give us a memo and be more explicit about the costs. It's this great cost for one vehicle, but in fact, have you built up the infrastructure, which is most of the cost, and then it's just one vehicle, that type of thing, and you can then multiply it in a lot of ways. Maybe if we could get more information, I think it'd be helpful. And probably with that, maybe it could go to Community Safety Committee if you want a deeper dive on that one.
Yeah, I think we can, because I think we've got to utilize whatever information is available to assist us.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. On page 102, we have one of the capital projects is the Garden City Lands, and it says that staff are in the process of planning the implementation of remaining park features identified in the park development plan. But at the same time, it says that the removal of contaminated soil basically is ongoing. So will the removal of contaminated soil affect the timeline for the park features that we're still waiting for, like the barn and whatnot?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, thank you for your question. As mentioned in the report, the area about contaminated soil, part of that includes the current and ongoing examination and assessment of the contaminated soil situation site-wide. And that also includes potential remediation measures. So after that, we will be able to identify how to tackle the rest of the plan in terms of the rest of the park development plan, including other areas such as the playground, etc.
Okay, so you're focusing on the area where we want to build the infrastructure, and then we move on to the rest of the site later on?
That would be identified in the future. Right now, we are not just focusing on one area, but site-wide.
Okay, so is it in any way going to delay those projects?
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I do see this, especially the attachment 1, the highlights of key active capital projects, as a great way for the public to see what is ongoing right now around the city in different program departments. I'd like to pick one item to speak to and ask about, and it's under the infrastructure program on page 100. It's the middle of the page there, invasive species management, started in 2022, expected to be completed in Q2 2025. I see this item a little bit different from the rest in the infrastructure program, because we're really not getting infrastructure so much in the way as we're protecting infrastructure. And also we're not like spending the money here as a budget of 300,000 on necessarily infrastructure. We're really needing staff or people's hands to do a lot of work. It's a labor intensive one as opposed to a build. So my question is, like, to have this as it's going in status quo go on till next year, Q2, I'm curious, because during the capital budget program process that we just went through a couple months ago, I had been advocating for ways to do habitat enhancement and get staff, and staff did come back and say that it didn't have to happen at the annual budget process. There could be a time in between where we, for example, do an enhanced blackberry control measure. So would that just tie into this? And in that case, would the budget then be, we'd have to amend that budget of this existing program? Or would it be an additional one?
Through the chair to Council Wharf, with respect to blackberry, there's a outstanding referral that's set for looking into the level of service that is needed and associated staff time or otherwise. So that's still open. In terms of the overall program, the funding that's in place today is adequate for the amount of resources we have to make progress on the projects. But blackberry, like I said, is an ongoing referral.
Then just a quick follow-up then. When would that get into this list? Would it be required first at the annual capital budget? Like the capital budget approval phase, or could it happen before then and become a budget item under infrastructure program?
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, the referral notes the 2025 capital cycle.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much. A very aggressive set of capital projects. I'm assuming that this adds up to what we passed in terms of the capital budget, 160 million, approximately.
Through the chair to Councillor Manotti, this is for active capital projects as of September 30th, 2023. So it will include all the active capital projects that have been approved up until 2023 capital budget process. So with 2024, it hasn't been included yet.
Okay. I do want to ask a question with regard to disaster mitigation adaptation fund infrastructure. I'm not sure who can answer that. I don't know if everybody watched the news today, but Alex from Delta made some comments about flood mitigation along the Fraser River, et cetera, and the fact that we're all vying for the same dollars. We're trying to lobby individually. We're working in isolation. And in my opinion, he's made a good point that the other levels of government are not helping. But it was interesting, and I was making a comment to the mayor about the good work that we've done in terms of flood mitigation with our riprap along the river, and those of us who took the boat ride from Gary Point up beyond Silver City, the fact that we've raised the dikes, and we're continuing, we have a plan, and maybe others don't. But on this, the city secured $13.5 million from the federal government. It's further what's there. How much other money are we putting into it that is our money for this year? Surely this is not all we are doing. I'm under the impression that we spend about $20 million a year, if not more, on improvements on the river.
Yes, through your worship to Councilor McNulty, this grant, the $13.5 or $13.8 million secured from the federal government, is at a 40%, 60% cost share.
Okay.
So we're spending $34.5 million as part of this program to get the
34.5 million.
is the total value, of which 40% is provided through the federal government.
No, that's great work. I just, it was rather interesting when I looked at what we're doing. Thank you very much on that. I have another question on your worship through you. Page 102, our playground improvement replacement programs. I sit on the new accessibility committee, and they're very active. I guess my question is, on the budget for playground replacement and in our parks in general, are we looking to provide for adaptation of individuals within the parks, even in terms of walkways, where we place rocks, where we place this, and not only from the adaptation point of view, but I'm also thinking of the seniors' point of view. A comment, for example, at Gary Point in the Stevenson Park, seniors can't chase their dog in there because they can't crawl over the rocks to chase their dog because the rocks are too high and the footing is unsure. So are we looking at every time we do this and spend it, accessibility?
Through your worship to Councillor Minotti, yes. So in every park and specifically actually in the overall park inventory, we're actually going through a asset management strategy and plan right now, identifying what's behind, what the gaps are, etc. So overall, we are looking to increase and improve on accessibility to not just seniors, but all users.
I think it's critical. I think the committee itself lauds some of the adaptations that the city of Richmond has done and has led in terms of Canada, and as well you well know with the Committee on Disability and others, we are doing it. Thank you. And the other thing in terms of the Richmond Curling Club, the budget of $2 million, is that only to deal with the mechanical equipment that's there? I'm hoping the curling club will get up and get totally viable, get many more members, and become the active club it was 5 years ago or more. I know it's only $2 million. Anybody answer that from Parks? From wherever? Okay, well, maybe you can help us out on that. I'm hoping that
through the chair to Councilor McNulty, for the highlight of the $2 million related to the Richmond curling repairs, is include a budget for 2 approved projects in 2022 and 2023. So there was a Richmond curling cup repairs approved in 2020 for $650,000 for emergency repair, and there's another $1.3 million approved in 2023 for priority 2 repairs, phase 1.
Okay. And then the other, my final comment, Your Worship, is same page, the Richmond Cultural Annex. Congratulations. Glad to see it's going to be open. And when will we have an opportunity to see what the programming will be in it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the building is actually operational this week, and the full programming will start on Monday next week, the full program start. And of course, we have the grand opening on January 19th. So if you'd like to coordinate, we'd be happy to coordinate a tour with Mayor and Council in advance of the grand opening on the 19th.
It'd be good to find out what the programming is what I'm getting. It's a win-win situation for the community and a movement in the right direction. And I'd like to, I think I'm just a memo to council as well. And thank you for the tour. I'd love to have a tour of it, but also let everybody know what we're doing there. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Mayor Brody. Yep, thanks for this report. And I just have a few little questions. FIN 102, the Steveston Community Park Playground Renewal. I just have a question about the design. So has this already been, have you already received all the feedback from the public on what the design's going to be like? Has there been a let's talk on this already, or is that going to happen after?
Through your worship to Councillor Glanders, the engagement process dated back quite a few years ago.
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah, through the concept design stage. Currently, we're going through detailed design right now, targeting to get a RFP, request for proposal, for construction in the next couple months or so. Throughout this detailed design process, we've been engaged with the key stakeholders, including the Richmond Center for Disability, Citizen Community Society, etc. They've been giving us a lot of comments. So they in our understanding, they represent part of the public as well. So we've been incorporating their comments.
And I'm just curious, is council going to get a chance to see the final plan before construction begins?
We'll be sure to engage with council in the form of memo as well.
Great. Okay, my next question is on FIN 103, the land acquisition fund of $117 million. That's an ongoing fund. Is that a, like, when did that amount get started? Is that an annual amount, or is that?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, there is a combination of projects that we approved annually for the land program. The money will only be spent on land acquisition transaction that have been approved, that going to be approved by council independently. So it's just money setting aside for future land transactions.
For future, for this year, or ongoing? Like, if we bought any properties last year, did they come out of, was the 117 higher last year than it is now? Is that how much we expect to spend every year on acquisitions?
So with the transaction, so this is about the budget that have for the active capital projects that are still open at this moment. So if there's transaction that was already completed, it will be the actuals incurred against the budget. So that remaining budget amount will be reduced by the actual transaction.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then my last question is on FIN 104 regarding the workforce management system, the budget $790,000 for implementing a time tracking system for payroll. I'm just curious, a lot of that is probably the cost of the software, but then there's going to be annual, these programs are really expensive as far as licenses go every year, so how much is the annual cost going to be as well?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, the workforce management system actually is based on an annual subscription. And so in that context, many vendors are actually moving to that model where instead of buying licenses, you effectively rent the services for on an annual basis. So the cost of the project was based on essentially, I believe it was a 5-year cost of that project.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, may I have a motion to receive? Moved and seconded. Further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we move to the Q3 financial information for Lulu Island Energy Company. Alan, is there anything to add to your report?
Your worship, I have nothing to add to the report.
Someone want to move it?
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And then the final one is the Oval Corporation, the third quarter financial information.
Nothing further to add, Your Worship.
Nothing further to add. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I'm looking at page 118, and it says that the administration and finance expense was $986,000, and that's all it says. Can you break that down for me, please?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that figure includes primarily approximately 80% is salaries and benefits pertaining to administration staff, including the finance department, HR department, IT department, as well as the management and non-management staff. As well, the remaining costs, approximately 20% of those include the IT software licensing costs, training, professional development, legal-related fees, as well as audit fees and board remuneration.
Okay, so that's 80% for salaries and benefits. How many employees are there in administration?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, there's approximately 18 staff in that area.
18 staff, okay. And I see on FIN 117 that there was a favorable variance, I mean, extra money of $404,000. and that the budget overall was favorable to 13%. So what I'm questioning is, we are giving the Oval, the City of Richmond is giving the Oval around $1 million a year. Do we need to adjust that? Or is it possible to adjust that?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, any surplus that the Oval earns at the end of the year is reinvested into the building, and the Oval funds its own minor capital projects from any surplus that's generated.
So when are we going to get more information on that? Like, because I know the roof has to be replaced one day. Are we going to get an update on that as well at some date in the future?
Can you just repeat the question, please?
Okay, so you're saying that anything extra, so we've got $404,000 and 13% that is extra, and that's going to go into infrastructure. Will we be getting a report on that? Because, I mean, it's adding up to a lot of money year after year.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, at the end of the year, we provide our annual audited statements to City Council. In that report, we also break down what's included in what we invest in our capital assets, as well as what's included in our reserves to fund future projects.
Okay, so we can expect that in the fourth quarter then?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that would be, the KPMG performs their audit in roughly April.
April. Okay, thank you.
Through your worship to Carol Day, just to clarify on another topic as well, is that, or not that topic specifically, is that the surpluses go to the capital reserves, not that they're identified to capital projects every year. So as a result, we have a significant surplus for capital projects moving forward.
Oh, interesting. How much is that capital surplus?
Do we have that?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, on FIN 119, the number that we have included as 11.8 million is what's included in our current reserves and provisions. A lot of that is allocated to current projects that have already been approved, as well as our future projects for the next several years.
That's a pretty healthy budget, 11.8 million. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Maybe just to clarify a little bit. So the money goes into a reserve fund, and with that reserve fund, you're able to do projects like, say, you built the field in front of the Oval, and you didn't have to come back to council each time. Whereas if it was a community center, it would be coming back to council in a budget process to do those projects. So when we did some of the projects, like at South Arm when they got a new gym, or Steveston when the whole thing has to be rebuilt, or Thompson when they got a new, whatever it was they redid over there a few years ago, those come back to council and we approve it, whereas this amount is in the fund and it's approved by the board of the Oval. And then we just see that it happens and watch it happen. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, that's correct. So since its inception, the Oval has funded approximately 25 to 30 million of its own capital projects.
Okay, and part of that is additional funding comes in through that GOT process, through the Games Olympic Trust Fund. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so some of that's matching dollars and it helps support all those different programs to build things.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page 5 of 5 on the spreadsheet of the revenues versus expenses, I'm just looking at the budget for membership, admissions, and programs. The budget was 2.3 million for revenue, and the expenses relating to that revenue, the membership, admissions, and program services is 1,795. So expenses are approximately 78% of revenue. So there should be like a 12% or 22% income sort of thing. But when I see that the revenues actually went up by 381,000, the expenses also went up by 373,000. So that's a 98%. So when the revenues went up by almost 400,000, so did the expenses, as opposed to going up by 78%. So I'm just wondering why that is. Why was it almost dollar for dollar instead of the predicted ratio?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, that's based on, part of that's based on the timing of expenditures, as well as some of the programs that we run. For example, we have summer camps that run in the third quarter. So depending on the margins and the timing,
By different times of year? it's-
different times of year, that's
Okay,
correct.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
All right, someone want to move the motion? Moved and seconded, discussion. Counselor Heed?
Yes, I respect that this is for information only, but I will be making a motion after the report is voted on.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you on that then. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Counselor Heed?
Thank you, Mayor.
Another matter?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Oval Corporation provide a comprehensive 2024 business plan. My feelings are this will clear up a lot of the clouded area right now, and we'd have a better understanding of what the Oval is moving forward for in 2024. So the motion is to have a comprehensive 2024 business plan provided to the shareholders, which is us, council.
Okay. Is that seconded? Okay. Now, Jerry or Rick, can you talk about the business plan? You have one, is it current?
Sure,
You
sure.
got new directors?
Yes, to your worship, the Oval does do a 5-year strategic plan, and the next version of, which is 2024 to 2028, will be before our newly formed board. And so we're anticipating that review and approval to take place in the coming months. And so once that is done, we'll be more than happy to share that with Mayor and Council.
So when would you think realistically we would have that, in the spring, early spring type of thing?
I think the springtime would be a realistic timeframe.
Okay. All right, we'll call the question then. Sorry, go ahead.
Just need clarification on that. I'm not looking for your overall strat plan. I guess you can call it a business plan, a work plan. I would like to see what you're looking at for 2024, what your anticipated programs are, your anticipated costs, and all of that. So we can just drill down a little bit further and have a better understanding, so every year you don't come back and get asked the same questions on the lack of clarification. You call it a work plan then, if you don't want to call it. I'm not looking for your strat plan at this point, looking for some type of work plan, business plan for 2024. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well then let's clarify the motion. So it would be for a comprehensive work plan for 2024. And I presume that what it would be, they would take you got the 5-year plan, but you drill farther down into 2024 and give us further details on that. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll take it that unless anybody objects, that's the motion then. Okay. Councillor Day.
Yeah, I like the motion because I have more questions about the Oval than anything else that we do here in the city, because it is at arm's length. They do have a board, and I feel like the city should be more involved in what we do over at the Oval. And that's why I look forward to reading the comprehensive work plan. I think it's going to be very helpful going forward. So I'll be supporting the motion.
All right, we're going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That's carried. And someone move adjournment. We're now adjourned. Thank you.